What's up, guys and gals? It's time for the latest piece of One Piece, chapter 1171, entitled Ragnar. And yes, for those of you guys wondering, I am still walking and talking, relatively speaking. But anyways, let's get underway with this one, because chapter 1171 is the first official chapter, of course, of 2026. Technically, I believe it's the official released one. And even if I'm wrong about that, either way, it's fire. It's absolute fire. 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, whatever you want to call it. I love this chapter. We're back to the present by the end of the flashback. I think we got basically all the information we need. Still with some questions like why did Shanks bring Loki back and stuff. Like we don't find out that information. There's probably a lot of reasons for that, and we'll theorize about that when we get there. But my prevailing theory on that one, because that seems to be the big question now that the flashback's over. We don't know exactly what happened between Loki and Shanks 6 years ago when he brought Loki back. Loki obviously went out to sea, etc., etc. Is most likely the prevailing theory that I agree with anyways is the fact that he was not exactly out there joyriding. He probably had an attempt on likely going to Marijois, likely to go get revenge for his father, destroy the world government, etc., etc., and Shanks had to stop him and say it's not yet time or something like that. You know, we need to wait. There's whatever Roger may or may not have told Shanks, we don't know, but I'm thinking that there's a reason for that. It's like, no, look, if you go and do that, you'll die and you'll lose all the power and you'll be a powerful ally. Like, it's not yet time, just wait, you know. Loki didn't want to wait, so Shanks and Loki clashed and probably dragged him back to Elbaf. That, to me, seems like the most likely one right now. But let me know what your guys' thoughts about the theory is down in the comment section down below. Anyways, let's try to get through this without me huffing and puffing too bad with all my injuries. It's starting to look black and blue back there. So, yeah, not exactly the best looking back in the world right now. But we start off where we ended up in Quest Castle. I believe that's the castle they're in, is Quest Castle. Now, this is where GABAN basically, like, they're all sort of not reminiscing, don't want to say. Now, some guards did survive, by the way. We do see them. Some guards did survive. And Jarl does not seem to have amnesia from that sword in his head, from the sword in his helmet, which obviously stopped the bleeding and from him dying. But GABAN and everyone, they're talking about this, and he basically says, if Harold had left the castle in the state he was in, he would have brought a huge, like, catastrophe and calamity to the world. There's just no question. And obviously, 100%. Is anybody questioning that? Harold was a match for a younger Rox, right? In his heyday and stuff. And he had a power boost and a wanting to please Emu sort of attitude going on there. Had he gotten a hold, especially of the Devil Fruit, had he gotten a hold of the Devil Fruit plus all of his power, I mean, who was around to stop him anymore? I mean, realistically, Loki obviously is an option, but GABAN was struggling right there. I mean, they were winning with the Conquerors hockey, but of course, due to the high regeneration, the fact that Harold himself had Conquerors and stuff like that was a huge difference from what GABAN had dealt with before. I would say that GABAN wasn't exactly out of shape or too old right now to fight. Maybe a little past his prime, but not really. And the fact that a young Shanks, him, and everyone like had to band together and stuff, and they still look quite beat up. There's very few currently left in the world that would have been able to deal with him. It probably would have been some combination of Whitebeard or Garp. Would have been the only ones able to really stop Harold at that point. And how much devastation and destruction would he have performed before being fully taken down, right? So it's really good that they managed to stop him here. Of course, it's a tragedy and stuff like that, but GABAN is not underselling what exactly or overselling what would have happened here. So he continues on saying that I had a taste of that hopeless future during the fight. Yeah, like GABAN saying, like, damn, like how many people wouldn't have known or would have given up? And as I said, other than like Roger's gone, other than Garp and Whitebeard at this point, who else would have been able to take him on? And in the outside world, I mean, maybe Rayleigh would have been able to help at that point, but when it comes to the point that he's out there causing devastation and not a sole figure, you know, other God's Knights come to meet him and etc., etc., if he's backed up at all, without a united front, who would have been able to stop him? So Gaban is not over or underselling, saying it would have been a calamity across the world. And yeah, he goes, no matter how hard we fought, and remember, they both have conquerors, his body just continued to repair itself. There was nothing we could do. It's shocking to think that something was actually able to stop him. So the fact that Gaban and Shanks, both using Conqueror's Hockey, were able to slow him down and obviously deal a lot of damage. It seems like the regen does have, I don't want to say like I'm just going to use the video game comparison. He's got a huge magic bar. You know, this regen seems to have a huge magic bar, and the more you slice them up, eventually the regen starts to slow down, especially Conquerors, imbued with the Conqueror's Hockey, as we've seen. But the big issue here is the fact that Harald himself also possessed Conqueror's Hockey and didn't seem to slow down very much. So you're going to lose a lot of stamina up against an ancient giant imbued with the contract. It's just, it's baffling how powerful Harald was. And also, even though he was obviously worn down, I'm not going to say he was at 100% after taking all those Conqueror's Hockey hits, Loki coming out there fresh in that full whatever Fenrir devil fruit that he showed up in, managed to slice and dice him pretty handily. Loki has, the power scaling community must be going nuts right now. I haven't been able to check it or whatever, but it just must be going crazy. So continuing on, Jarl is still there and saying that, did you know the sacred treasure of Elbaf would be this powerful? And he says, no, I actually have known nothing about it. And of course he's the oldest living thing other than probably Emu right now. And he says, I get chills down my spine when I imagine what would have happened had Loki not been here today, had Harald been able to eat the fruit, pretty much. So then we see Shanks beaten and battered, and he's thinking about the time he first met Harald. He said, when I join the Gods Knights, it'll be a new dawn for Elbaf. And when he met up with his father, you know, pretending to be not of the lowly realm, and said, if you have any wish, simply name it, and it'll be within your reach. You've truly endured a miserable, terrible life until now, my poor, poor child. And it's like, okay, interesting from Garling, because we've seen very stoic Garling, but here it's like Garling was willing to bring Shanks in with open arms and be like, oh, my poor, poor boy, to have to suffer so long. No, 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 you are of my blood. You know, it's almost, I unconditionally love you. Of course I'll accept you right back. You did nothing wrong by being in the low realm for 20 years. You didn't know any better. That's, you know, that is the fault of us for not getting you back sooner. So you were welcome in our, you know, sort of idea. If he wasn't such a piece of shit, and he wasn't the Celestial Dragon, and he wasn't a bunch of other things, this would be kind of a point in Garling's favor. To be fair, he's like, oh, I don't care what your past, what you did in the past. You were on the most notorious pirate crew in the whole world and all this stuff. You're still my kid. You deserve to have the best life I can give you. Come home. Not, I'm just going to say it, that's still a point in the fatherhood markings for Garling. I hate to give a Celestial Dragon a point, but let's be real here, that is a point. It's an unfortunate point we have to tally on the board, but it is there. So anyways, this is where he grasps his arm, Shanks grasps his arm, and he's remembering, forget your former life on the surface. The commoners don't even count as people down there. And then we can't erase that fatherhood point. It's still a fatherhood point. But, you know, and Shanks is grasping his arm, and he's just hating who he is and where he comes from and his blood and stuff. So immediately when he sees Shanks struggling and stuff, he's just like, oh, like he wants to puke pretty much from all this, and he just hates everything that went down. Harald was a good person. Harald was, you know, and he starts shouting about this, but Gaban's like, hey, Shanks, stop it right now, because he's tearing at his arm almost. You know, he's doing a bit of a Nami before she stabbed herself sort of thing, and I think Gaban notices, like, what is Shanks gonna do? Okay, hey, Shanks, stop it. And I love that he does this. Gaban is secretly Mewtwo, by the way. 100% confirmed he's secretly Mewtwo. And we love Gaban for it. Scopper Gaban is Mewtwo, and we love him for it. Because he immediately hugs Shanks, because that's his boy, right? Remember, Buggy, and he even mentioned this a few chapters ago, Buggy and Shanks are basically their kids. The Roger, I was about to say the Roger family, accurate description. Roger ran his crew the same way Whitebeard did. They didn't necessarily call Roger father, but they were a family. And Scopper even mentioned that Shanks and Buggy, none of us really had kids, but you guys were basically our sons. You were our kids. So Scopper, being the uncle, being the father, whatever you want to call him, he's still a father-like figure. He's still a parental figure to Shanks, a real one. And he hugs him immediately. Hey, Shanks, stop that. He gives him a hug. He gives, 23, however old Shanks is at this point, 23, 25-year-old Shanks, he gives him a hug and just reassures him. He goes, that's a bad habit, You should never resent the circumstances of your birth. And there's that MEWTWO line, and we love it. Well, I understand now that the circumstance of one birth is irrelevant. It's what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are. Now, he did not say the second part of the line, so he's Mew. He'll be MEWTWO later, but he's currently Mew. He's got the Mew part. He'll get the 2 later. Trust me. He's Scopper GABAN. You know he's going to have the 2. Anyways, he goes on, and then, of course, like, unfortunately, a young man, a young, angry Shanks, who hates where he's from and hates all of this situation, he starts yelling at GABAN and saying, why did Harold have to die? He was such a pure soul. He was such a good guy. If only I had been better. If only I had been faster. And then GABAN immediately shuts him down. This is not your fault. And, sometimes in One Piece, there are characters that try to make other characters feel better. In most fiction, in stories, in real life, where they say something's not your fault and you did not directly cause the problem. But of course, there's having foresight and having 2020s after the fact, as they say. The thing is here that no, it really truly isn't Shanks' fault. Shanks had no idea he would go into a deeper covenant, and he did hurry to Elbaf, and he did do all these things. But he didn't want to put a target on the back, so he probably had to sort of, vamoose the Navy a little bit there, play a little incognito with them and stuff, and here's where he's taking the blame on himself. The reason Harold died is because Shanks didn't show up and prevent this from happening before, and it's like, Shanks, that might have been a worse situation and stuff, so GABAN tells him, this is not your fault. Shanks, you are here for a reason. Everyone's life has meaning to it. So he almost has the MEWTWO. I'm giving it to him, by the way. That's close enough. Everyone's life has some meaning to it. It's what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are. Let's go. You just got to hold on. That's pretty much the MEWTWO line, okay? If I typed up the full MEWTWO line in this translation and released it, nobody would blink an eye. Everybody would be like, yeah, that's just a little bit different wording. Yeah, you could immediately do that. So once again, GABAN is MEWTWO. But it's a really nice, touching scene. Shanks is taking this really, really hard. And of course, Loki is as well. We get a double page where he's, is this what happens when you love your country too much? And he's sitting there, the flames roaring all around him. He's put his cloak on his father's obviously beat up, smashed up, ate up body, whatever it is. And he's put his fur cloak across him, and he's crying to himself and saying, like, this is terrible, this sucks. We jump now over to a new scene in Mary Joa where Emu is huffing and puffing, and he's like, he was a rare, ancient giant, enhanced with even more power and an undying body by me. Those traits made him a true monster, and yet he was still killed. How could have... Is something unforeseen lurking in Elbaf? So this is incredibly interesting, because this tells us Emu had no idea, obviously not about Ragnar, but had no idea about this super awesome chocolatey covered devil fruit that Loki ate that completely, devastated, Harold and stuff like that, because Emu's like, wait a minute now. He was a super rare ancient giant. His power was like just insane, and we knew that before he had the contract. He was going toe to toe with rocks, and he was like, and I enhanced him with an undying body. How on God's green earth, or my green earth, or my, I guess, blue sky, was he killed? This is, like, unprecedented. And he's huffing and puffing, and he's like, this is insane. Like, he was a true monster. The fact that I could control him was crazy. And then this is where he's talking about this with the Gorosei. They said, we should have the Abyss pentagram carved by Harold inspected. And Emu immediately said, that will not be necessary. It would only result in the death of more knights if I sent one right now. Because whatever destroyed Harold obviously is still there. And he's basically like, look, the knights are great and all, but Harold as a knight was a step above. None of the knights are on his level, and he died. We send another knight there, they're dying. I don't care they have an immortal body. The immortal body was just killed. So, he says it would only result in the death of another knight. Every covenant comes with a price to be paid, even for Moo. And that's why, obviously, Moo is huffing and puffing right now, sort of idea, and is just going through this whole thing, because he or she is just sitting there like, the death of an immortal body, of a contract, obviously takes a damage and toll on Emu themselves. This also proves that it might have something specific to do with the devil fruit, but if you beat down these immortal bodies, if you beat them down enough, if you atomize them, if you molecule them enough with maybe massive conquerors and stuff, the regen will, like I said, it's like a really long magic bar in a video game. Eventually you will run out, and even if it slowly, passively regenerates, if you keep getting hammered and you keep getting hit, eventually someone like Roger, Shanks, Scopper, somebody like that could effectively kill a God's Knight. So that's what I'm going off of, is that it was a combination of just accumulated damage, and the regen couldn't keep up with being killed, I don't know, 50, 100, hundreds of times during that entire battle. And, you know, the amount of damage that a Fenrir Loki was doing to him and stuff like that, eventually the immortal body can't keep up, and boom, destroyed. So the fact that Emu even admits that a death of another knight, knowing they have an immortal body, means that there are limitations, and it's damaging to Emu, as we see. So they continue on saying, as he sits in the chair talking to the Gorosei, and states, he had no qualms about lowering his head to appease humans. All he ever sought was communion with other nations and people. Harald was just a total aberration. And he told the same thing to Rox, like, this is my one chance to get one of the most powerful nations, the giants, and a rare specimen like Harald, someone that powerful, under my wing. It's like if he had been able to convert Whitebeard, or Rox himself, or Roger, it would just be devastation 101. These guys are like the powerhouses, you know, and Harald's right up there with them. And he's just like, I had an opportunity and I've seized it. However, he was born with the blood of those savage, battle-loving giants, and had we admitted him into the government just nonchalantly, his very presence might have destroyed us from within. So Emu was taking very precautions about this, like this was scary for him. And he even says Elbaf should never have known a king of his disposition. Forging a covenant with a cooperative ancient giant like him was an unprecedented opportunity. But this disappointing outcome proves that history does not lie, and we were always going to be incompatible, because never forget that Elbaf is of the D. Dun dun dun. And it's like, okay, so the fact of the matter is that this is stating that Elbaf as a whole, and everyone born there and raised there, and, you know, the ancient giant blood, is of the D clan as well. This implies to me that both Harald and Loki have the D. And Emu knew this, but still tried, hey, what if I had one of the Ds working for me? What if I turned my enemy's power into my weapon, sort of idea? And it backfired. Obviously not backfired well enough, because Emu just took a little bit of huff and puff and damage and lost a valuable ally. But of course, everyone lost a huge ally in Harald as a result on the other side. So it could have blown up way worse in Emu's face. Unfortunately, it didn't. But he's not going to obviously attempt this again, by the sounds of it, to at least the Covenant side of things, making them God's Knights, a known member of a D clan, or someone of the D clan. So yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. I'm sure the theory videos are going to go crazy when it comes to that one. Then we jump over to back to the castle, where everyone has sort of settled down, and they're talking about what to do next. And they're like, Loki, the country's going to be in disarray. Loki immediately says, I'm heading out to sea, Jarl. I'll take the surviving soldiers with me. So the surviving soldiers, as I already stated, and we see them here again, soldiers that know exactly what happened in this castle and what Harald became. It's not just Shanks, GABAN, and Jarl. There are soldiers and Loki who knew what happened as well. And he's like, I'm going to take the rest of them. We're going to form a crew, and we're heading out to sea. And this is where Jarl inquires about his final request, that Harald wanted everyone here to know what Harald did and how horrible it was and how foolish he was and stuff. And he was a very foolish, naive king. But they want to, and I've already stated this many times, of course Loki wants to preserve his memory. Because while he was misguided, while he was foolish, and while he was naive, across 140 years of his life, he still tried to do it from good intentions. He wasn't doing this out of for bad reasons. They were all good intentions and good reasons. He just seemed to falter on every step, and now he wants that laid bare. Loki said, I cannot tell the people the truth. You're all going to drop it right here and now. Don't speak a word of what happened here today. Jarl even says, if we say nothing, who do you think they'll blame for this? And Loki said, the same person they always blame, me. I've always taken the blame. He's basically being Batman. He's like, the Joker cannot win. I killed those people. That's who I can be. I'm whatever Gotham needs me to be. Loki is like, I am going to be whatever Elbaf currently needs me to be. They need a villain, and I am already established as the villain, and Harald can be elevated as the benevolent king that the people loved him for, and stuff like that. And he says, say if I was going to become king, will you actually see me even honoring all of my father's ideals that now the people have been swayed towards? I can only tackle this the way I know how. And he said, with this ability, I'll settle the regrets of the old man and his soldiers. So obviously this is a declaration that he is likely to go out to sea. We know he went out to sea because he met Lola and stuff, and Shanks obviously did bring him back. As I said, at this point, there are many theories about this, but I'm still saying that he probably had an opportunity to go attack Mary Jo once he found it, and Shanks interceded him and said, no, Loki, now is not the time. We don't have the strength. We cannot do it. You will go up there and die, and the devil fruit that you possess, that Emu obviously right now, I mean, I don't think Shanks knows this, but Emu doesn't know about it. And it's like, if that gets repossessed by them, like, there's just catastrophe and stuff like that. So, we're assuming a lot of things there because that's one of the questions left unanswered by the flashback. Because after this, we do jump, after he states this, we do jump back to the present time where he has told all this to his brother Hyrudin and, of course, Luffy and everybody like that, and Gaban confirms it. So, this is where everyone's like, please don't leave Loki and stuff like that. Gaban and Shanks stay silent about this. And but Loki's intending to go out with the giants, and of course these soldier giants, they're out for blood too. The government made us kill our king. We are going to follow Loki. Now where these soldiers are at, we don't know. Did they all die or something like that? But Loki heads out, and he's heading out there to obviously cause destruction with the world government. Shanks is weary of this, so is Gaban, but they leave, and this is where, as I said, we jump back to the present. He said, after that I set out to sea. And he doesn't stay about it. He said, Hyrudin, by the time you guys returned to this island, everyone had already dubbed me, Loki, the Kingslayer, Loki, the whatever. And he said, I had no reason to correct that narrative. But it's not like I was crazy enough to brag about killing him either. That's why Loki has never said anything in his defense, but he's never said anything about, oh yeah, I fucking killed the old man. Because he's like, no, I let everyone believe what they already would assume, but I never did anything to confirm, deny. As I said, Gaban confirms all this and says, he's telling the truth, Hyrudin. I want you to know this, And Gaban's not going to lie, and of course Hyrudin is going to trust his word. He said, I just didn't want everything he stood for to be gone and dismissed. Because you have to also think about it from this perspective. What if the world government, let's say he had said, okay, Harald did all this stuff for over 100 years, and he got taken advantage of by the government at every turn, and then we were forced to kill him because they were going to make us an army of giants, blah, blah, blah. What do you think would happen? A lot of the giants, because remember, they're still mostly warrior giants at this point. I mean, they're being born now in the present storyline, but that's another 20 years plus, or at least that's roughly a few more decades going to happen. Here, a lot of the giants would probably, be like the soldiers that followed Loki. They'd be like, oh, well, obviously our king was wrong, and maybe his ways and his ideas were wrong. At first it'd be anger and hatred towards the world government. We will cut all our ties, we will never agree, and we shall set out to war with them. Terrible idea. Loki and Jarl knew this, so did Shanks and Gaban. And secondly, when would it start to turn to resentment? Look at our weak king. We never had these type of problems when we had warrior kings and we were all about the war, the school, the library, the trading with humans and stuff. Because you got to remember, most of those giants who were opposed to this are still alive at this junction. So yeah, it could easily have everything that he had worked towards, both the positive and the slight negatives, but mostly positives, would have probably crumbled within the first decade after the anger and the hatred had subsided. It would have turned to resentment, regret, etc., and needing an outlet. Loki took all that away from them and continued the way Elbaf currently is. So he said, with all this in mind, do you really think I should have told the people everything? Loki was absolutely right not to follow Harald's request. Harald's last request was, once again, another example of over 140 years of good intentions with no foresight, with just stupid naivety. Even on his deathbed, Harald could not figure out, that's not a good idea, Harald. Why don't you sit down, shut up, and let the people who can think ahead more than one day make the decisions. Loki made the right call. Harald was wrong even on his deathbed, in my opinion, because everything I just said would have come to fruition. You know this. You know that. Because in this present day, there are still the new giant warrior pirates. Jarl is still alive. Gaban's wife, Ridley, she's still of the warrior clan and stuff. Remember, it's only this newest generation that has not known to wield a sword and a shield and sword and sort of idea. So all the giants currently living on Elbaf are still of that generation, and all they would need is a little push into the let's be a warrior clan again. They'd probably be like, oh yeah, well that's our roots, that's our traditions, that's our history. Fuck yeah, let's go. They wouldn't need much encouragement to go back to the way and undo all the good that Harald did. So it's 100% Loki was in the right here, and that's where he basically says, so Elder Jarl, this is where Hyrudin brings up, after Loki's sitting up and stuff, Hyrudin says, Elder Jarl, for some reason, was always opposed to your execution. So obviously, they had brought it up over the past few years. They had brought up, why don't we execute him? And Elder Jarl was always like, apparently, no, 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 no. And so now I understand why you chose to keep this a secret, and I understand why Elder Jarl, who of course people would have to listen to, always said nope. So he has no amnesia. The sword doesn't create anything. Jarl does not have amnesia. He just literally is keeping the secret. He's keeping his mouth shut like Gaban did. And he says, Father choosing death in the face of the government's manipulation. The world government has been our enemy all this time, and that has never changed. Why did they do this to Father and stuff? And so this is where Gaban continues the conversation and says, they've even now sent more knights to Elbaf with deep ties to Harald. Even Loki doesn't know all the details about Harald's dealings in the Holy Land. I can fill you in if you want. So Gaban apparently knows all of the dealings that happened in the Holy Land due to probably information from Shanks and stuff like that. So Gaban was about to fill in some of the gaps. But this is where all the new giant warrior pirates, Zoro, Sanji, they're all like, that's not necessary for now. Those details will matter later. We need no further reason to protect our country. And I'm like, all right, this is inspiring shit. Let's go. And this is where Hyrudin is the one to release the chains on Loki. Loki doesn't really know what to say. He says, Loki, it seems we both feel the same way about our father, and I'm sorry for everything. Hyrudin taking the first step into saying, Loki, we didn't always get along and stuff, but I get it. I understand, and I'm sorry for anything that I did. Like Loki, you never said it, to your mother before she died, and you didn't really get much of a chance with your father. Do not screw up this relationship with your brother. That's what we want here. So he said, for the sake of Elbaf, let's make a stand together. This is very much the Two Towers. It was Aramir in the books, but Theoden in the movies. Let this be the hour where we draw swords together. The two kings of men, it's like the two sons of Harald, the two princes of Elbaf raise their arms together, let's go. It's inspiring. Loki's just thinking about the fact that he's released from the chains and stuff. And Luffy's just happy. He's like, yeah, Loki, you get to fight now. This is awesome, right, man? And boom, one of the giant Draugr enemies comes down into, the underworld and stuff like that. It's roaring, and everyone's like, wait, what? There's a monster ranger down here. What the hell is that? It's massive, and this thing is massive. Like, Loki is huge. This thing, Loki would fit in one of its eye sockets by the looks of it. This thing is fucking massive. And I didn't realize how massive these things were. Of course, the children, create them in their mind, something so terrifying. So, of course, it would be huge. And said, that's one of the monsters that was raging up there. It's crazy. We get this thing. They remarked that, is this a Draugr? I never thought they were real or whatever. And Loki's like, oh, ho, ho, I'm going to have fun with this. What a good warm-up. And immediately, so they all jump on the, the boat that carries them, the Viking ship that carries them between the realms. And he said, all right, Irunin, hurry up and stuff. So they're all going up and said, we admit we prejudged you when you called you a king-slaying piece of shit. And all the, they all say, we're really sorry, Loki. And we see Zoro and Sanji are there as well on the ship, and they're all heading up. And, good for them. Good for them to take the first step and stuff. And Loki doesn't know what to do with it. He's kind of embarrassed. Irunin even has to add that little bit of, but this doesn't undo all the crappy shit you've done. And he's like, shut up, go already. I don't need to hear you guys, all your crap and stuff, of course. It's going to be a very tentative situation and relationship for a while, but obviously Loki is 100% on their side. Let's go. And Loki's like, I'm free to move. This is awesome. All right. And then we see Luffy still chilling on his knee. And he's like, she. And he's just happy to be around with Loki. And it's hilarious because at the end, I'll just skip to that part because at the end of the chapter, which is the last, it's a double-page spread, it's awesome. Luffy has been climbing up slowly up Loki. He's staying with Loki while everyone else is sort of chilling. Or it seems that at first I thought Sanji and Zoro were both on the boat. I have no idea what's going on because that might be a mistake because we see Sanji with GABAN and Chopper later on, but he was on the Viking ship, so I have no idea what's going on. Anyways, but yeah, so maybe because I'm skipping ahead, I don't know. But Loki's just like, huh? Luffy, what are you still doing here? He's like, well, I just want to see how you fight at full strength when you're not all chained up. I can't wait to see what you can do. And he's like, all right, well then, Ragnar, let's show this little pipsqueak our power. And we hear the squeak, squeak from Ragnar, and boom, in comes Niflheim. He jumps up, he slams the Ragnar into the face of the Draugr monster. Niflheim, of course, being, as we know, one of the realms in Norse mythology, and just boom, Niflheim, and just freezes the entirety of the Draugr just in one blow. And it's just like, wait, what? And the break is next week. Now, the last, as I said, I skipped over this, but part of the last scene in that page is GABAN saying basically, hey, Chopper, I know you want to take care of me right here, but I'm really worried about my son. Can we be mobile and stuff? And Chopper's like, yeah, sure, like, let's go. And Sanji ends up carrying GABAN and Chopper with him and saying, be careful, Sanji, I've got it. Weren't you two going to stay behind, sort of idea? So is he basically like, hey, I want to get back on the boat? Because we saw Zoro and Sanji, or at least two small figures, are standing there on the boat when they say we're really sorry. I assume they were Zoro and Sanji, but now Sanji must have went back and grabbed them or something. I don't know. Are they going to wait for them? I have no idea, because they got to hurry up to the surface. Shit is wild on the surface, and we got no conquerors up on the surface. We need Zoro up there. We need Luffy up there. We need Loki up there. We need our conquerors up there. GABAN even beat up as he is. We know what Chopper can do. Give him a rumble ball. Wonder if, yeah, that'd be funny. GABAN with a rumble. Oh, wait, if it's an ancient, Zoan, Fenrir, mythical, give Loki a rumble ball. Okay, that's dangerous as fuck. Never mind. But yeah, so break next week. What an amazing chapter, though. Obviously, as you guys can tell, had a crap ton to talk about there. And I didn't even get to all the nutty theories that obviously are spitting all over the community today. So, yeah, but that's it from me, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the chapter as much as I did. Hopefully I didn't miss too much. That's why I was going through the chapter, basically panel by panel, line by line, because there was so much and I didn't want to miss anything to cover there. Hope you guys also enjoyed the new layout, because this is the first review with the newer updated layout. You got the just slight updates to the design and everything. Nothing major has changed, but just some slight tweaks to make everything look a little bit cleaner. Added a couple of characters over this area here. But yeah, Hope you guys enjoyed. And we'll see you guys back here next time. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. As I said, break next week. So it'll be another week break before we get to 1172. But with such fire chapters in between, Oda, take all the rest you want, because I'm loving all these chapters thus far. So that's it from me, guys. Have a good one, and we'll see you back here next time. Have a good one.